prohibited legislators from receiving jazz tickets, for example. Somebody goofed. That was not supposed to be in the bill, but it got into the bill and was put into law. And there's great unhappiness about that, but also probably some reluctance to be the first to propose changing it. The legislature also assigned a joint ethics committee to look at legislative ethics issues and make recommendations for the 2010 general session. This committee has been meeting since March. To date, they have made no recommendations for consideration in the next session. At the last meeting, which was conducted last week, there was a flurry of concern expressed about the course of this initiative and what it would or would not do, or what some alleged it would do erroneously, feared it would do in some cases erroneously. And so there was a discussion about whether the legislature should appoint its own independent ethics commission, and where that goes we have yet to see. But so far the committee has not made any recommendations. According to the Deseret News, there are occasions when lawmakers bent on a particular philosophy refuse to do the bidding of the people. For instance, state lawmakers either can't or won't institute meaningful legislative ethics reforms despite years of public opinion polls and other measures which tell us Utahns clearly want them. We were pleased to see that in the last KSL Deseret News poll on this initiative, taken approximately a week and a half ago, more than 85% of the voters of the state, as measured by the Dan Jones poll, support the idea of an independent ethics commission and other provisions of this measure which will strengthen Utah's ethical laws at the state capitol. We think that's expressive of substantial public support. However, we have also heard that a number of legislators don't think that particularly means anything because this will all blow over, and no one who doesn't support ethics reform is in any real danger of losing a seat. So I guess time will tell. We will see what happens. Is the current system working? These significant and informed watchers of Utah politics say no. The Ogden Standard-Examiner describes legislators as experts at excusing bad ethics, grading their efforts with a D. The Salt Lake Tribune lamented lawmakers took baby steps. The City Weekly called their efforts the best toothless reform, and after all that they said they would do but did not, we still are at the back of the pack. And again, Calvin Grondal from the Ogden Standard-Examiner, we think put his finger on the issue pretty clearly, although it's chopped off at the bottom of the cartoon. The caption says, as I recall, but we're used to taking gifts from lobbyists, and that really expresses a culture that has grown up over time, and there are some people there who are not particularly anxious to see that faucet turned off. We are often lauded in Utah as one of the best managed states in the country. So why aren't we also one of the most ethical, instead of one of the states lagging the farthest behind? We believe we need ethics reform in the state. We believe this initiative accomplishes many, many good things that have been observed for a long time as necessary. It doesn't solve all of the problems. It goes too far for some, it doesn't go far enough for others. We think it's a reasonable balance and a reasonable compromise. In Utah, the legislative power of the state resides co-equally with the elected legislature and the voters of the state through the law of initiative and referendum. And the voters may propose laws just as the legislature may, and if passed on a general election ballot, those initiative proposals become state statute on a co-equal footing with anything the legislature might adopt. There have been some allegations that this initiative is some kind of signal that the floodgates are going to open in Utah and we will have government by initiative. But as this slide indicates, the history of initiative and referendum in Utah compared to other states is extremely spare and very, very modest. In the last 100 years, there have been 20 initiatives in Utah that have gone to the ballot, and that's not very many. The entire initiative is available online at www.utahethics.org. We invite anyone who's interested in that to go online and read it. The initiative has 3 basic parts. First of all, it establishes an independent ethics commission. The procedure by which this commission is selected has been carefully chosen because we felt that the only way we could take the process out from under the thumb of partisan influence is to require a random selection process with certain requirements and prohibitions on the people who seek appointment as members of the commission. And so we've provided that, for example, commissioners may not have been lobbyists for 5 years preceding their appointment. They may not have been elected public officers for 5 years preceding their appointment. And they may not have been officers in a political party for 5 years except for service as a voting precinct chair or vice chair or delegate to a state or county convention. The legislative leadership, the Speaker of the House, the Minority Leader of the House, the President of the Senate, the Minority Leader of the Senate, under the terms of this bill, are expected to create a solicitation process under which anyone in the state who meets the criteria for commission membership would be welcome to submit an application. Those legislative officers then unanimously must agree on 20 names. And this consideration process and the selection of 20 names has to be accomplished in open and public meetings. Those names are then put into a hat. This is kind of an unusual procedure, but we thought it was quaint. And we thought it would be one way of assuring random selection. The first 5 names drawn from the hat constitute the members of the commission. They may hire a full-time executive director. This executive director must be a member of the Utah Bar. The commissioners are not paid for their service except for a per diem for travel and expenses. They are a part-time organization. We don't envision that they would become a significant additional layer or bureaucracy of state government. The second thing the bill does is establish a code of conduct. And the code of conduct that we have laid out is taken from a couple of core principles. The first of these is that legislative service ought to represent one of the highest degrees of trust between the voters who elect legislators, a high enough degree of trust that it would be comparable to the trust and responsibility to disclose conflicts, to account, and to be careful with public money and public funds and public responsibilities, the same kind of standard of ethical expectation that presently applies to corporate directors, officers, trustees of trusts, attorneys, agents of any kind, partners in a business partnership. This fiduciary relationship is already a standard of law that courts have said applies to legislators in their dealings with the public. We believe that it is time to incorporate that ethical standard within a legislative code of conduct. And so the provisions of the code of conduct are intended to help legislators understand that though we have a part-time legislature, and that's healthy, and we expect that legislators and legislative candidates necessarily bring a certain package of built-in conflicts to those positions because of their employment, because of other private undertakings in which they're involved. We believe that